town of Cedar Bluff wasn't on any major map. If you blinked while driving past, you missed it entirely. Just a handful of buildings resting between rolling hills and patches of dry grass that once dreamed of being farmland. It was the kind of place where time slowed down, not because it wanted to, but because it had no other choice. The sun was barely up. Shadows stretched long across cracked sidewalks, and the only noise was the occasional bird clearing its throat. On a power line, that is, until a ka-chug curr pop shattered the peace. A sleek black Triumph Bonneville came coughing down Main Street like it had smoked 3 packs a day. It wheezed, grunted, and finally limped to a stop in front of a tired-looking building with a weather-worn sign that read, Walter's Auto, since 1972. No appointments, no complaints. The man on the bike removed his helmet slowly, like this wasn't his first mechanical heartbreak. His hair was wind-tossed and his eyes had that familiar road-weary sparkle. His jawline might have been chiseled from movie screens, but here in Cedar Bluff none of that mattered. He knocked twice on the garage's metal door before it creaked. Open inside, the smell of oil, rubber, and burnt coffee mixed like cologne for gearheads. An old man stood hunched over the hood of a red '67 Mustang. His coveralls were stained, his hands permanently tattooed with grease, and his stare, when it finally lifted, was the kind that could cut steel. "We're not open till 8, he muttered, without looking up. The man checked his phone. "It's 8:03. "Well, don't just stand there. You've already missed happy hour," the old man said, wiping his hands on a rag that had clearly been used to clean both engines and existential crises. "Bike died on me," the stranger said, gesturing outside. "Hoped someone around here could help." The old man grunted and walked outside. He bent over the bike, squinting like the machine had just insulted his mother. Triumph Bonneville. British, beautiful, and always bleeding somewhere. "You know your bikes," the man said, watching him work. "Son, I've been fixing engines since Nixon lied to America and gas was 35 cents. Of course I know my bikes." The old man paused and finally gave the stranger a second look. "You look familiar. You that TikTok yoga guy?" The man laughed. "Not even close." "Actor?" "Something like that." "Well, Hollywood," the man said. "Your carburetor's toast and your fuel line looks like it had a panic attack. You're gonna be here a while." 2 hours later, the stranger sat on an overturned bucket, sipping black coffee that could dissolve a tire. Walter worked in focused silence, only speaking when it was absolutely necessary, and often sarcastic. "So, what's your story?" Walter asked, tightening a bolt. "Midlife crisis, run from paparazzi, aliens?" "Not aliens, just needed air. Life gets heavy." Walter nodded. "Ain't that the truth? You look like someone who's lost something." The man didn't answer immediately, then, "Yeah, I lost my sister and my best friend, and I guess I've been trying to find pieces of myself ever since." Walter didn't flinch. "Everyone's looking for pieces. The trick is not to pick up the sharp ones." By noon, the Triumph sputtered, coughed, and, miracle of miracles, came back to life. Walter leaned back, arms crossed. "She'll take you 100 more miles. After that, say a prayer and keep the clutch light." The man pulled out a wad of cash. "How much do I owe you?" Walter didn't move. "Just come back someday. Tell me how your story ends." The man stared, a bit stunned. "You serious?" Walter's eyes didn't waver. "I don't fix things for money. I fix them because they need fixing." A long pause. Then, "I'm Keanu," the man said, extending a hand. Walter blinked once, twice. "Like Reeves?" Keanu smiled. "Exactly like that." Walter shook his hand, firm and fearless. "Well, hell. I didn't think I was that far out of the loop." Keanu climbed on his bike, gave the old man a nod, and kicked the engine to life. As he rolled away, Walter sipped his 5th cup of coffee and whispered to no one, "Damn fool movie stars. Always showing up when the coffee's gone cold," but he smiled. A real smile, the kind you hadn't seen on his face in years. 3 days after leaving Cedar Bluff, Keanu Reeves was back on the road, but this time his thoughts weren't on the horizon. They were stuck somewhere between an old garage and a man who fixed More than just broken engines. Keanu sat in a roadside diner in Santa Fe, pushing hash browns around with a fork like they owed him money. His black Triumph was parked just outside, ticking quietly as the engine cooled. But it wasn't the bike. That had his attention. It was Walter. There was something about him. Something unshakably human. Not in the polished Hollywood sense Keanu knew all too well, but in the quiet, cracked way some people wear their lives like leather. Weathered, worn, and worth every mile. So Keanu did something he hadn't done in years. He turned around, back. In Cedar Bluff, the morning fog had barely lifted when the sound of Keanu's bike returned to Main Street. Quieter this time, but steady, familiar. Walter, head buried under the hood of a rust-bitten Chevy, didn't look up. "You again?" he said flatly, wiping his hands on a rag older than the internet. "Told you I'd come back," Keanu said, parking the bike. Walter straightened with a grunt. "You lost, famous boy, or just really craving my terrible coffee?" "Bit of both." They both grinned. That afternoon they sat on two mismatched lawn chairs behind the shop. A tin ashtray between them caught the breeze and rattled like a soft tambourine. The wind smelled of oil, rain, and old metal, the scent of memories. Keanu leaned back, legs stretched. "Can I ask you something?" Walter gave him a side glance. Thought movie stars had people to do that for them. "I'm off the clock." "Well, in that case, ask. Why are you still here? In this town? This garage? You could have moved on, made more money, lived in comfort." Walter stared out at the hills like they were old friends. "I had a reason once. Her name was Ellie." Keanu waited. "Married her in '68. She wore blue Converse and a black dress to our wedding. Said she didn't believe in white because she wasn't anyone's angel. First time I saw her, she was fixing a jukebox in the diner across the street. She hit it with a wrench, and I swear, my heart hasn't beat the same since." Keanu smiled. "Sounds like a firecracker. She was a storm in a woman's body. Kept me honest. Made this place worth waking up for." "What happened?" "Cancer," Walter said softly. "The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't knock. It just walks in and takes over. She was gone in 9 months. I'm sorry." Walter nodded slowly. "I kept the shop open because she loved it. She said it was where I did my best work. And because, what else was I going to do? Retire? I'd rather rust." Keanu stared at the man, seeing someone who had every reason to give up, but never did. Later, Walter invited him inside the shop's back room, a time capsule wrapped in dust and stories. The walls were lined with photos, hundreds. A boy holding a wrench taller than he was, a family of 5 waving beside a fixed-up station wagon, a young woman in a graduation cap, holding keys Walter probably fixed for her when she was 8. "These are your customers?" Keanu asked. Walter nodded. "My people. You don't run a shop in a town like this without getting to know every story behind every oil change. You're like the town's unofficial guardian." Walter chuckled. "Guardian? I just patch things up, they do the living." Keanu lingered on one photo, Walter and a younger woman smiling in front of a cherry-red Mustang. "She's beautiful." Walter's face softened. "Ellie. That was her car. Still have it out back. Won't touch it. It's perfect just the way she left it." They were quiet for a long time. Then Walter said it. "I've got maybe a year left. Doctor says my lungs are more scar tissue than anything else between the fumes, the cigarettes, and life. Guess I cashed out early." Keanu's heart dropped. "Walter, don't say anything," he interrupted. "Please. I've made peace with it. What I'm not at peace with is leaving behind nothing." Keanu shook his head. "You haven't left behind nothing. You've changed lives." Walter gave a sad laugh. "I change oil, not destinies." "Maybe they're the same thing," Keanu said quietly. Music softens to a reflective theme. Narrator. "Some people light up screens. Others light up souls." Walter never wanted the world to know his name. He just wanted to help fix what was broken. One engine, one heart, one moment at a time. Keanu Reeves never planned to stay the night in Cedar Bluff, but the rain had other ideas. That evening, as clouds wept over rusted rooftops and the sky turned a soft, dusky violet, Walter appeared holding two mismatched mugs. "Town's got a guest house," he said casually. "Ain't much, but it's got 4 walls and no leaks. Or you can sleep on the lift next to the axle grease." Keanu smirked and took the mug. "I've done worse. Once shared a trailer with a python in Thailand. We were filming a jungle scene. I was not the apex predator." Walter chuckled. "Hollywood's weird." "Facts," Keanu said, sipping the brutally strong coffee. They sat outside the garage as rain began to patter lightly on the tin roof. 2 men, 2 mugs, and a silence so comfortable it didn't need filling. The next morning, Keanu awoke to the judgmental stare of chickens, literal chickens. They stood outside the guest house window, clucking like disapproving grandmothers. Keanu blinked and rubbed his face, mumbling, "Okay, not a dream." He stepped outside to the smell of motor, oil and bacon. Walter was already knee-deep in an engine, arguing with a local teen about torque settings. "You want the belt to squeal louder than your cousin at a Jonas Brothers concert?" Walter barked. "I don't even like the Jonas Brothers." The kid yelled. "Good. Then you'll learn to fix this right." Keanu wandered up, still brushing sleep from his eyes. "Morning." Walter glanced over. "Hope the snakes weren't too noisy in the guest house." "Only the ones in my back. That cot's got a vendetta." Walter handed him a thermos. "Drink up. We've got carburetors to confuse." By noon, Keanu had met most of Cedar Bluff. There was Marlene, the firecracker diner owner who cooked like an angel and cursed like a pirate. She slapped him on the back and said, "You're cuter in person but thinner. Eat this." She served pancakes so large they had their own gravitational pull. There was Tommy, a wide-eyed kid with greasy hands and encyclopedic knowledge of every car from 1965 to today. He cornered Keanu beside a tool chest and whispered, "Are you actually Batman?" Keanu replied. "If I told you I'd have to buy you ice cream." Tommy accepted. There was Greg the postman, who had never delivered mail to a celebrity, but was now considering writing a letter to Keanu just to say he had. Every conversation circled back to Walter. "He saved my dog from a frozen lake," Marlene told him over coffee. "He fixed our church van for free after we crashed it in a wedding parade," the pastor said. "He once helped me change a tire while I was in labor," a young mom confessed. Keanu listened, and the puzzle pieces started to fit. Walter was the quiet heartbeat of this town, its underappreciated engine. That night, Walter made grilled cheese and tomato soup on a single hot plate inside the shop. Keanu offered to help, but Walter waved him off. "I've been feeding hungry mechanics since before you were born. Hard to argue with grilled cheese royalty," Keanu said. They ate slowly, swapping small stories and memories. The sound of distant thunder punctuated their silences like a soft drumbeat. "Ever think about writing a book?" Keanu asked between bites. Walter raised an eyebrow. "A book?" "Yeah. Your stories. Your life." Walter chuckled. "About what? Gaskets and regret?" Keanu leaned forward. "Exactly. People would read that. They need to." Walter shook his head. "People don't need more words. They need kindness. The kind that doesn't make headlines. That's the kind I'm good at." "You're good at a lot more than that," Keanu said softly. As the night deepened, the stars came out like old songs in a jukebox. Familiar, comforting, and quietly perfect. They sat on the porch in folding chairs, sipping weak tea and listening to the hum of a town at peace. Walter lit a cigarette, took a long drag and looked out at the stars. "Tell me something you've never told anyone." Keanu blinked. "What, like a secret?" Walter nodded. Keanu stared at his mug for a long time. "When my sister died, I stopped believing in plans. I stopped building for the future. It felt like I didn't have one." Walter didn't interrupt. "I've been running ever since. Movie to movie. Ride to ride. I don't know what home means anymore." Walter exhaled smoke. It means a place that doesn't ask anything from you, but still gives you peace. Then he added, when Ellie was sick, I was too scared to sit with her in the final days. I'd pace the hall, work on the truck, anything but sit there and watch her fade. I still regret it every damn day. They sat with that truth, with their own broken pieces. Two men from different worlds, quietly discovering they weren't that different after all. The morning Keanu Reeves left Cedar Bluff, something felt off, not in a bad way, just different. Like the town itself had adjusted slightly to fit a new memory inside its skin. The sun hadn't yet cleared the rooftops when Keanu stepped out of the guest house. His helmet dangled from his fingers. His Triumph motorcycle, now purring with new life, gleamed faintly with dew. Walter had worked on it one last time. Of course he had. Walter was already out front, elbow deep in an engine bay. He didn't look up. I tightened your clutch last night, he said. Don't say I never did anything for you. Keanu smiled. I was gonna leave a thank you note, but your chickens were guarding the door again. Looked like they meant business. Walter finally turned, eyebrows raised. Told you, they're ex-military. They both chuckled, but the laughter faded quickly, leaving space for the things they weren't saying. You heading out before the pancakes? Walter asked. Keanu gave a sheepish nod. Marlene said she was trying bacon syrup. Walter winced. That woman's got a death wish, and she wants to take us all with her. They stood in a comfortable silence, the kind born not of awkwardness but mutual respect. I don't know how to thank you, Keanu said, his voice quieter. Walter shook his head. You don't owe me a thing. Just live right. Treat people like they matter. That's how you thank me. You reminded me who I used to be, Keanu admitted. Before the lights, before the cameras. Walter nodded slowly, wiping his hands on a rag that could probably qualify as a biohazard. You'll be back. How do you know? Walter gave him a look. Because you're the kind of man who keeps his promises, even the ones he hasn't made yet. Keanu slipped on his helmet and turned to go, then paused. You ever need anything, you call me. I don't care what time it is, where I am. Walter squinted. I don't take charity. It's not charity, Keanu said, climbing onto the bike. It's a return on investment. You helped me get my soul back. Least I can do is offer terrible coffee and existential conversation in return. Walter actually laughed. An honest, chest-shaking, eyes-crinkling laugh. You got yourself a deal, Hollywood. As Keanu eased down Main Street, the townsfolk emerged. Marlene was already outside the diner, spatula in one hand, waving with the other. Tommy chased after the bike, with wild enthusiasm and a cape made from a shop towel, shouting, Take me with you, Batman. Greg the postman saluted like it was a war film. Keanu couldn't help but laugh. It was the kind of laughter that rose from somewhere deeper than amusement, something healed. At the edge of town, just before the population 1x12, give or take, sign. Keanu slowed to a stop. He turned and looked back. He saw the shop. He saw the faces. He saw the stillness, the kind that only comes from a place that knows exactly who it is. Then he looked up at the sky and whispered a promise only the wind could hear. And with that, he rode off. Back in Cedar Bluff, Walter stood at the garage door with a mug of coffee, watching the dust settle. Damn movie stars, he muttered, shaking his head. Always rolling in with broken engines and leaving you with feelings. He turned and walked back inside, but not for long. That afternoon, a small brown package arrived at the shop. No return address. Just a name written in confident black ink. To Walter, the guy who fixes everything. Walter opened it carefully. Inside was a letter, written in handwriting both familiar and sincere. Walter, I tried to find the words, but everything sounded like a speech. You deserve more than that, so here's something real. Look under this letter. Then call me. K. Beneath the paper was a handcrafted plaque, smooth walnut with silver inlay. It read, Walter Grady Mechanic, mentor, friend, for every engine you fixed and every soul you patched together along the way. You mattered. More than you know. And underneath, P.S. I have a little idea I want to run by you. It might involve motorcycles, kindness, and something called the Walter Project. Stay tuned. Walter sat there for a long time, plaque in hand. Then he looked around the shop, the tools, the grease, the fading light, and for the first time in a while he didn't feel like a man running out of time. He felt like a man just getting started. 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since Keanu left Cedar Bluff. 3 weeks of press events, interviews, and film shoots, of designer suits and hotel rooms, of smiling while cameras clicked and fans shouted his name like a chant. But through all of it, through every step onto every red carpet, his mind wandered back to one thing: a man with oil-stained hands, a town too small to be seen but impossible to forget, and a cup of the worst coffee that had somehow become his best memory. Walter. So one morning, without a phone call or a calendar check, Keanu slipped on his leather jacket, slid the letter back into his inside pocket, and rode. The familiar roads led him through mountains and meadows, along rivers that shimmered like silver ribbon in the sun. As he crested the last hill before Cedar Bluff, something in his chest tightened. The shop was closed, not lunch break closed, not Sunday closed, shut tight. Dust gathered around the windowsill. A single wrench left by the front tire rack like a dropped pen at the end of a sentence. He knocked, once, twice, nothing. From across the street came the voice he hadn't realized. He missed until it cracked through the stillness. "Don't bother, Mr. Reeves, he's not there. Marlene." She stood outside her diner, her apron streaked with flour, holding a plate of untouched pie. Inside, the air was thick with worry and sugar. Keanu sat in the booth where he'd once devoured pancakes under Marlene's bossy eye. Now she was quiet, older somehow in just 3 weeks. "He collapsed in the shop last week," she said, pouring coffee with a shaky hand. "Kept hiding the pain for months. Damn fool thought no one would notice." Keanu stared at the cup. "Where is he?" "County Hospital, Rockridge, room 407, go. He hasn't smiled since you left." Keanu rode faster than he had in years. This wasn't stuntman speed. This wasn't movie magic. This was urgency. Real, bone-deep urgency. Walter lay in a hospital. Bed that was too white, too clean, and too wrong for a man who belonged among wrenches and rust and purpose. Keanu entered quietly. "You again?" Walter croaked without opening his eyes. "Don't you have a sequel to film?" Keanu walked over, pulled up a chair, and grinned. "Canceled it. Said I had better things to do." Walter cracked one eye open. "You bring coffee?" "Tried. They searched me like I was smuggling moonshine. Something about hospital regulations." Walter chuckled, then winced, then sighed. "You scared us," Keanu said softly. "The town's worried. I'm worried." Walter stared at the ceiling. "Didn't want anyone fussing." "You're allowed to be fussed over, Walter." He didn't answer, but he didn't argue either. Back in Cedar Bluff, the shop sat silent, but the town was anything but. Tommy had started a fundraiser, complete with a lemonade stand and glittery posters that said, "Walter is our superhero." Marlene launched Bacon Syrup Week, with every dollar going to Walter's hospital. Bill Gregg, the postman, delivered over 60 handwritten letters and 27 drawings of Walter in a cape. The fixer of everything had finally broken down, and the town he built one favor at a time was rallying to rebuild him. A week later, Walter returned, not at full strength, but back. The first thing he saw was his garage, washed, cleaned, and humming with life. Keanu was sitting on the steps, 2 cups in hand. "One's yours," he said, strong enough to wake the dead. Walter took the cup and sat beside him. "Thought you'd be long gone by now. You're not getting rid of me that easy." "You chasing chickens again?" Keanu grinned. "Nope, I'm chasing purpose." He pulled a small folder from his jacket. Inside were blueprints, sketches, permits. "I want to start something, in your name. A place where kids can learn trades, mechanics, fixing things, real things, not Just engines, lives, dignity. You call it what you want. I call it the Walter Project. Walter stared at the papers, then at Keanu, then away. What if I'm not around long enough to see it? Then we build it fast. Walter's eyes glistened. You're serious? Dead serious, but only if you help me. And for once, Walter didn't argue. He just nodded. Then let's get to work, Hollywood. 3 weeks had passed since Walter Grady returned from the hospital. He wasn't working full-time yet, not by doctor's orders, and definitely not by Keanu's, but he still managed to sneak out to the garage each morning just to make sure nothing exploded. But something strange had taken over Cedar Bluff, a gentle hum of mystery. Out-of-town cars showed up with license plates from 3 states over. Marlene's diner abruptly closed for private catering. Folding chairs vanished from the community center. Greg the postman started wearing suspenders and smiling like he knew something you didn't. Walter noticed. He asked questions. He got nothing. Tommy told him he was building a soapbox racer for a high-speed biscuit run. Greg handed him a letter that read, "To the world's best mechanic," and bolted like a kid playing ding-dong ditch. Even the chickens were suspiciously well-behaved. Walter may have been slowing down, but he wasn't dumb. Something was happening. Keanu had disappeared 2 days prior. Claimed he was going to check on permits. Walter rolled his eyes. That man had more mystery in his pinky than the town had in its history. But on the morning of the surprise, Walter found a freshly ironed white shirt and a navy blue jacket hanging from a scarecrow-shaped coat rack on his porch. Pinned to it was a note written in Sharpie. "Put this on. No questions. Don't make me come back there." "'Kay," Walter muttered. "If this is karaoke night, I'm throwing a carburetor." Through the mic stand. Down at the town square, something unthinkable had happened. Walter's garage was unrecognizable. A stage had been built in front of it, framed by banners, lights, and a stunning mural painted across the side wall. A larger-than-life portrait of Walter, mid-laugh, wiping his hands on a rag. The words painted above it read, "For every life you've repaired." The whole town was there, and more. Former residents who'd moved to the city, veterans who'd once rolled in with broken-down trucks and left with more than a tune-up, people who'd never met Walter but had heard about the man who gave, without asking. And standing at the center of it all, wearing boots dusty from working behind the scenes and a grin as wide as the Rockies, was Keanu. Tommy pulled up in a golf cart that had been hilariously and impressively modified to look like the Batmobile. Walter stepped out, adjusting the tie someone had forced around his neck. He froze. The applause hit him like a wave. Hundreds of hands all clapping, hundreds of eyes all on him. He whispered, "What the hell is this?" Keanu met him at the steps of the stage. "This," Keanu said, "is for you." Keanu took the mic. "Some people live lives worthy of movies. Others make movies feel small." Walter Grady never asked for attention, never asked for praise. But today, we're going to give him both. He gestured to the stage backdrop. This shop has been the heartbeat of Cedar Bluff for over 50 years. So today, we rename it. The crowd hushed. A curtain dropped, revealing a new sign. The COUR, Walter Grady Foundation, for hands that heal. Keanu continued. This building is now more than a garage. It's a school, a sanctuary, a legacy, a place where young people can learn a trade, where veterans can find new purpose, and where kindness is the required tool for every repair. Walter stood, mouth slightly open, hands shaking. "This isn't about charity," Keanu added. "It's about legacy. It's about making sure the story of one man's quiet goodness never fades." He handed Walter a gold-plated wrench. On the handle was engraved, "For every bolt tightened, every soul lifted." The applause came again, louder than before. Marlene wiped her eyes with her apron. Greg tried and failed to keep from bawling into his mailbag. Tommy fist-pumped like he just won a NASCAR race. Walter looked at Keanu. "You did all this?" Keanu shrugged. "Nope, we all did. The whole town. I just organized the chaos." Walter looked at the crowd, then back at Keanu. then down at the wrench in his hand. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Keanu said. Say yes to being remembered. Say yes to letting people love you back. Walter swallowed hard and nodded. Then, yes. 2 months after the surprise event in Cedar Bluff, something extraordinary was unfolding. Day by day, quietly and powerfully. The Walter Grady Foundation was no longer a plan. It was a movement. The garage, once a one-man operation coated in rust and modesty, had become a space filled with purpose. And not the loud kind. The kind that clanked like tools, buzzed like saws, and echoed with the laughter of people who were finally being seen. Veterans worked shoulder to shoulder with teenagers. Moms who once couldn't change a tire were now teaching others. Strangers who walked in with doubt walked out with confidence. And at the heart of it all was Walter, still grumbling, still handing out wisdom like it came on a wrench. Don't force the bolt. Feel the thread. Same goes for people. Keanu Reeves didn't make a spectacle of his involvement. He never held a press conference, never posted selfies. He just showed up, helped pour concrete, tightened hoses, handed out sandwiches. And once a week, without fail, he and Walter sat out back on the same bench under the same sky, with 2 terrible cups of black coffee between them. You ever think you'd become a legend? Keanu once asked. I'm still figuring out how to use the toaster, Walter replied. Then came the ripple. A veteran-turned-instructor started a similar garage in Nevada. A small town in Montana opened Grady's Garage. Not a franchise, but a tribute. High school in Detroit reached out to implement Walter's curriculum, and before long a movement was born. Hands That Heal, a nationwide initiative started by the foundation, focused on mentorship through mechanical trade training, emotional resilience, and community rebuilding. Walter didn't go viral. He went vital. One day, a Hollywood producer contacted Keanu. They wanted to turn the story into a film. Keanu smiled and said, "Only if we get it right. No makeup, no Hollywood polish, just truth." Walter's only request? Don't make me look taller. People around here will start expecting more out of me. At the official opening ceremony, cameras flashed, journalists scribbled, but the real highlight was when Tommy, now 17, took the stage. He wore the same tool belt Walter gave him years ago. Mr. Grady saved my life, not with a big speech, not with money, but by sitting next to me when no one else did, by showing me how to fix things and how to forgive myself. The crowd stood. Walter sat, stoic as ever, but a tear traced down one cheek. That night, the stars above Cedar Bluff glowed a little brighter. Walter and Keanu sat out back watching the lights of the garage buzz gently. They're going to keep going, Keanu said. Long after we're gone, Walter nodded. They better. He looked down at his old hands. I thought all I'd leave behind were oil stains and a junk drawer full of screws. Keanu looked at the garage, alive, bright, filled with people. You left behind a blueprint for how to live. They sipped their coffee. Then Walter smiled. Not bad, for an old mechanic. Final rise of music. Strings, soft guitar, and piano build to one last emotional crescendo. Narrator, quiet, resolute. Walter never chased greatness. He practiced goodness. And in doing so, he became something greater than legend. He became a light, the kind that doesn't blind, just guides, one life at a time. The end.